Well, when we invited you all here, we wanted to have a real conversation. I think it's happening. I've cried twice. I've laughed a few times. I think it is kind of rare and it's kind of not, right? Like, guys are talking about this kind of stuff in small pockets, but it's rare that we're sitting in City Hall talking about it. So thank you for being part of this. Thanks to all of you. Manifest change. If you cry during my presentation, that will be weird because I'm not going to say anything really inspiring. I'm just going to give you an idea of what Manifest Change has been up to, a bit of a window into what guys in Ottawa are doing. So you're getting that already, and I don't claim to have like the complete picture of what's happening in Ottawa about guys ending violence against women, but I have a couple things to share. We've been running the program for about 5 months. You can see the website behind you there. That's a gallery of, some of you are up there. Recognize some of your faces. Men who've put their picture out there and said, this is what I do to address violence against women, to address gender-based violence. And there's also a workshop series that some of you are probably also familiar with. And that's aimed at younger guys, 13 to 18 years old, who are motivated to become active bystanders. So as guys, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to addressing violence. There's the healing we need to do for ourselves. We all use violence in different ways, no matter how good we think we are. Many of us have experienced violence in different ways. We've got to find ways of not letting that block us. And then there's the work of preventing violence from happening in the first place. And that's where Manifest Change is. That's where we do our thing. So we're working with younger guys to try and do all the stuff that you guys have said. Awesome. So far, about 175 people have put their picture on the website or on Twitter, and it's going to be more by the end of today because we have a place set out in the lobby for you to add your pledge at the end of the day. So there's a couple beliefs, I guess you could call them, that go with this work, the way we're doing it. And I wanted to share those before I share a story or two. The first is that as guys, we have to acknowledge the fact that most of this work's been done by women. Like, we wouldn't be here talking about this, doing any of this stuff, if it weren't for women's leadership and women's organizations. And the project is based in the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women. So that's like a really important structural thing, is that we're not just some random dudes who decided to save the world. We're doing this work in the context of working alongside women who are serving women who are experiencing violence. Like, survivors' voices are the biggest thing on our radar, so we can never let that drop. When I talk about working with men and boys, it's code word. It's a code word for lots of kinds of men and boys. So being masculine or being a guy, how many different ways is there to do that? It has to do with our family, it has to do with our culture, it has to do with our gender and our sexuality. There's no one guy template or something. So just to put that out there, that's an important thing for us to say and do and model when we're working with younger guys especially. So why us? Why bother? Why should men get involved? Because we're at the center of this. Because we're at the center of it. We have a complicated relationship with violence. We get violence. It happens to us. It usually comes from other guys. Not always, but often. We give violence. We channel it back out. We're the epicenter. So if there's anyone that can interrupt that flow of violence, we're in a pretty good position to do something about it. Thank you. And when I say complicated relationship to violence, I mean 1 in 6 guys have experienced some form of violence as a kid. What I mean is the organizations that make up OCTIVA, the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women, that serve women who are experiencing violence, the majority of women who come through the doors are there because someone in their life, a man, has done something to harm them. We're getting it, it comes through us, it comes at us, it comes out from us. So finally, we're part of the solution. We can't be left out. We can't leave ourselves out. And there's been invitations all along as women have done this work to get us involved, and there's always been men who've stepped up, and I think we can see from who's in the room today, and even who's not in the room but paying attention, who will be watching this on the news tonight, that there are more and more men and boys than ever who want to figure out what our role is in this. So, how is that happening? What's happening in Ottawa? We've delivered about 25 to 30 workshops in the last 5 months since we launched, so that's about 500 people have had this conversation that we're having today, and learned to recognize what sexual violence looks like and what we can do about it. What do you say when your friend makes a joke about rape? What do you do when you see someone on the bus harassing somebody else? So we role play those things, we practice them, because we can have all the good intentions in the world, but if we don't know what to do with them, we don't have the skills and practice the skills, how are we ever going to get good at actually making it happen? So that's what we do in the workshops, and I see some of the guys who lead the workshops here today. Can we give you a round of applause for that? So those of you that are up there on the screen, you maybe are curious to know who else has been putting their name out there and what have they been saying? 42%, so almost half of you have said, I'm doing something as an individual. I'm going to speak out when somebody says something sexist at work. I'm going to, the next time someone says, I raped that exam, I'm going to say something that's not cool. So about 50% of guys who've become involved feel most comfortable saying something, like on an individual level. About 15% of us have said that we want to do something as a parent, like in our relationship with our partner or to our kids or with a significant other. So that includes things like teaching our daughters that they don't have to recognize the limits that they're going to face. Teaching our sons what consent means. Respecting our kids' boundaries around their bodies. So 20% of us have said that what we can contribute to ending violence against women is role modeling for younger guys what that means. What does it mean to respect myself as a guy? What does it mean to respect women, to respect feminine persons? And there's a number of people who've pledged, because it's their job to do that. They're teachers, they're youth workers, they're police officers, and they're constantly in contact with younger people, and they need to be, you are, paying attention to what messages you're sending as you do your work with those people. And finally, a quarter of those of us who pledged have talked about something on a movement scale. Like, I'm going to use my position in the government to work for more inclusion. I'm going to contribute money or time to a women-led organization. I want to be an ally in some form. But what does that actually translate to? All those different intentions. What does that translate to? Some self-reflection. So as guys, we need to be thinking about questioning our own experiences, dealing with our own experiences of violence so that we don't pass them on. Recognizing that we have the potential to be violent, and if we don't pay attention to that, it might come out. Or maybe it has come out, and we need to deal with that. Male privilege. Thanks for bringing that out early. We can talk about that more later. And then that interpersonal thing. So what do you do when somebody drops a rape joke? A number of you, and I think some of you might be in the room this morning, have told me what you did. So hopefully I get it right, because I'm gonna do my best to hint at your stories, and if you want to tell them in more detail later, please do. But one guy who responded said, one of my male coworkers commented on the appearance of a female colleague, and I said, that's not cool, that's sexist. And the guy was like, what? But the fact that the man brought this up in a professional context allowed a female colleague to chime in and say, well, actually, this is why. So he was an icebreaker, if you will, to talking about sexism in the workplace. Seems small, but remember, when we're looking at a continuum of what makes violence against women seem normal and allowable, sometimes those little verbal things are really important to check that in the early stages. Another guy said, I remember sitting at a table of men when the topic turned to our partners. one of the people at the table started asking people about their queen, whether or not they ran the show in their home. And so the man asking the question really seemed to enjoy telling stories about how bossy women can be, and everyone around the table started chiming in with their queen stories. So this guy says, when it got to me, I was asked if my queen ran the show. I said, my partner and I actually split things pretty well. And that was the end of the conversation. Who knew? Like, he didn't have to say any more than that. Now, of course, that problem doesn't go away, but those little moments of interruption, they count for something. And they get us better at doing larger interventions, too. One of the volunteers in the program recently said to me that he was playing soccer, and it was a corner kick, and he was standing next to his teammate on the field, and the woman was taking the kick, and his male teammate says, I'd mark that. And he said, you'd what? And he just responded with, really? And the dude was just, come on, I'm a guy. And he was like, that's what guys do? He just continued being incredulous, and eventually the guy dropped it. So again, I don't want to say that that's like, now our job's done, but it's those little moments that start to hint at culture change. There's a lot we can do about parenting. People have been talking, guys have been telling me about how they want to teach their kids consent as early as infancy by just respecting your child's boundaries. So if you want to give them a kiss and you ask and they say no, you don't kiss them. It's that simple. Some of the things I've already talked about. I guess one of the most, I'm going to end it here because I feel like the Q&A is going to be the most interesting part. But before I close, one of the most encouraging things that I heard back about the campaign so far has been a survivor who wrote in, a woman survivor, who said, Manifest Change has made a difference in my life by creating a starting point from which discussion and communication could begin. As survivors of domestic violence, my teen son and I sorely needed to discuss the lessons of my past as he begins to understand the parameters of healthy relationships. So if all this does is allow us to bring the topic up over and over and over again, then that's something. We need to keep going with that. We need to keep rolling with that. So I want to encourage you to join in if you haven't already. Anytime during the sort of mingle time after we're done here with Q&A, feel free to go out to the table in the foyer there, and there'll be someone there who can help you get your picture up on the website, or you can just tweet it if you're on Twitter. Tell us what you do to manifest change. Tell us what you will do to respond to end violence against women, because we need to talk about it like we're doing here, and we need to talk about it on social media. So really appreciate everyone that's here. I think we've got a great start to the next part of the conversation, so I'm going to turn it back to you, Adrian.